Hey everybody, welcome to another video review. So I just recently put up a pretty long comprehensive review for the Star Wars Episode 4 New Hope Darth Vader dual signature lightsaber from Master Replicas. And I figured I'm just going to keep on going, continue. I don't have a lot of these lightsabers. I just have the 4 Vader lightsabers, and I've been holding off making reviews for quite a while until I got all of the signature versions. And of course, haven't done that. I like to keep it going, so to speak. I've had this particular lightsaber for the better part of, I think, 8 years. I still remember sort of the details of this. This was a cash pickup, which means that I found the seller online. We happened actually to be, within the same geographical location. And so this was a cash deal. He had everything in the original packaging. It wasn't mint in box. He had opened it in order to document it, take some pictures. I don't believe, though, that he had really, excessively touched any of the components, especially the signature plaque. And I remember actually driving to a place somewhere in Chino Hills, and I think it was one of those places where he was having a birthday party for his kid. And it was one of those, I think, jumping, was it like one of those balloon places where you can just go in those balloon houses or something of that nature. And so I met him there, and he actually had to, leave the party. He went to the car. He showed me all of the, the details. He showed me the lightsaber and the signature plaque, all that stuff in the car. And then we repackaged it, and I gave him $1,000. I forget whether I did it electronically or just gave him cash. Probably was electronic. But I still remember pretty vividly that day, even though it was over 8 years ago, mainly because I was so excited because this is the Star Wars Episode 5 Empire Strikes Back signature edition 1-to-1 size lightsaber prop replica from Master Replicas. And the reason this is somewhat special, of course, is because if you ask a lot of Star Wars fans, especially those of my generation and my age, and they like Star Wars, they'll tell you that their favorite movie is Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. And I won't get into too much nostalgia for it because this is a Master Replicas lightsaber review and not an Empire Strikes Back review. But I remember, just to give you a little bit of background, I remember first watching Empire Strikes Back in the movie theater. This was 1980, and so I was about 5 years old. I had been in the United States, had immigrated from mainland China, and had only been in the United States for less than a year. And so at that time, watching a movie in a movie theater was a luxury that was unheard of from where I had come from during that time period. I didn't really even understand the concept of what that was. And so my mom wanted to take me to see a movie. And back then, just to kind of, show you what it was like back then, it was over 40 years ago. There were these things called newspapers, believe it or not. And in the newspapers, they would have a section where you would, basically have essentially the prints of movie posters. And they would kind of tell you the movie, and then there would be advertisements. They'd be there to catch your attention, and there would be another page with all the little movie theaters on this one, sheet in the newspaper with the times. And so at the time, my mom asked me, what movie I wanted to see. We looked at some of these, posters on the newspaper, and it was a toss-up between Superman and The Empire Strikes Back. And I don't remember if it was the original Superman or it was Superman 2. You have to check that up. Which Superman was in the movie theaters in 1980. I want to say it was Superman 2. I think it was a little bit too late for the original Superman. But at the time, as a 5-year-old boy who knew really nothing about American culture and could barely even speak English. I mean, I spoke a little bit, but, it wasn't great. I basically made my decision based on the movie poster. And I think for Superman 2, there really wasn't much of a movie poster. I think it was just like maybe an S or something like that, So it wasn't like a very exciting movie poster, whereas The Empire Strikes Back, for those of you, again, who remember, there was just all sorts of stuff on that movie poster. I mean, Yoda was on there. You had Vader in the background. You had Han bending Leia over on her back, like Gone with the Wind, right? The famous Gone with the Wind pose. It just looked like it was a lot more interesting. And so I opted to see that movie instead of Superman, which back when you're a 5-year-old boy who could barely understand English was probably the biggest mistake of your life, because we all know what Empire Strikes Back was all about. You watch this movie and it just starts like right after the events of A New Hope. And it was just a very interesting, movie. I mean, when you're just a kid, I just remember being utterly confused about what the heck was happening. The structure of the film was very confusing because it split our protagonists into two parties, right? There's Han and Leia on one side, and there's Luke and with his training with Yoda in Dagobah on the other side. We would just bounce between one and the other. I had no idea how these two particular, paths were related. And of course, there were some pretty dark and scary parts of it. I remember being especially, terrified when Luke went into that, tree and fought, the dark side cave at the base of the tree, right? And he fought this dream version of Vader, and then he killed him, and the face was himself, which was completely beyond what my brain could encompass at the time. And then obviously completely terrified of that one scene early on where it showed the back of Vader's scarred head before the helmet came down in his meditation chamber, his meditation globe. And I remember being just utterly terrified that, he wasn't going to turn around. So yeah, kind of a crazy movie for a kid. And of course, the ending was a complete downer. And I was just so utterly confused about what was going on and how this movie ended. We just walked out of the theater, and it looked like Han, in my mind, it looked like Han Solo had died and Luke had lost the hand. Han Solo had died. I just did not know what to think of this. And when I saw Return of the Jedi, obviously 3 years later, when I was at that point 8 years old, it was like basically the greatest movie experience of my life at that time. But when you're 5 years old watching Empire Strikes Back, that was literally the worst experience ever. But of course now, as a 47-year-old man who's watched Empire Strikes Back countless times, it is my favorite Star Wars movie of all time, and one of my favorite movies actually of all time. And so for me to get a signature version of the lightsaber from Empire Strikes Back just meant a little bit more to me. And this is the first signature version of Vader's lightsaber I got. I think I got this first, followed by Return of the Jedi's signature edition. And then obviously, per my last video 10 years later, finally the dual signature version of A New Hope. So just as before, I'm going to kind of show you the case. There's nothing too spectacular about it. This is the very similar to the case of A New Hope. And the acrylic, of course, fits on the inside of the base, of this mirrored base. This will be in contrast to Return of the Jedi, where the case actually fits on the outside. So there's a small little design change there. You can, clearly see the acrylic. The one difference is that it's still roughly the same height as the New Hope, Star Wars A New Hope version, even though you don't really need that height as much, but again, because of the plaque and the extra sort of space that it takes, they made the acrylic case a bit higher as well. Another thing is that the acrylic legs are much further apart. And so this is a reflection of the fact that for this signature edition, you only had James Earl Jones' signature. So there's only one plaque versus two. And they obviously meant for you to put that plaque in the center. And that's why they made the acrylic legs much more spread apart, so that you will have room to put the signature plaque in the center. So that's how it's meant to be displayed, okay? You have the same mirror base, and I'm going to take the acrylic cover off so that we can more easily appreciate the lightsaber without the glare from the acrylic. There's not much to say about the mirrored base. I did try to do a good job cleaning it, but as you can see, there's still a little bit of dust in there. The acrylic case is not perfect. It's been 10 years. And we're going to just twirl this lightsaber around in its display on its base so you can see it from all different directions. Another thing that's a little bit interesting is that the lightsaber is oriented in a different way. So for those of you who don't remember, but at least my Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, the emitter of the lightsaber is pointed toward the left. And the Return of the Jedi, similarly, the emitter is to the left. This is the only lightsaber where the emitter is pointing to the right. So once again, the Empire Strikes Back has to stand out, I suppose. So just a little observation there. By the way, just to let you know, how did I know that this is the case? Because trust me, when I first got it, I really tried to put the emitter pointing the other direction because of the OCD in me. And if you do that, it simply doesn't seat in the grooves of the acrylic legs, and it's not going to be level, it's going to be off. And so it's quite obvious that this is the way it's supposed to seat. And you'll see that when I take it off and then try to put it back on. I haven't actually taken it off the acrylic leg for 8 years, just to let you know. So again, pretty remarkable in terms of the length of time that's passed. So let's take a look here at the signature plaque. So here you see it says Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, Darth Vader lightsaber, James Earl Jones. Here's his signature. It's a signature edition, and we have 382 of 500, and you see the Master Replicas and Lucasfilm logos on the corner. So a few things to go over. You can obviously appreciate that this is a much more rare version than the dual signature A New Hope Vader. It's half the limitation, only 500 instead of 1,000. And this is the case as well with the Return of the Jedi. So that's the first thing to point out. Again, they decided just to have James Earl Jones sign this rather than have the dual signature. One of the things you can appreciate is that even though the gentleman that I bought this from swears to me he never touched it, and the plaque was, wrapped in the same type of tissue paper. It was in the little white, signature plaque box. I mean, the crazy thing is that this was just horrifically tarnished when I first took a look at it. He apologized for this, obviously, but he swears he never touched it, and this is just the oxidation with time. At the time, it had been, close to 12 plus years since this was first issued, give or take. So that's the first thing kind of to appreciate. I do have some Malm ultra high-end polish coming in the next day or two. And based on, again, the Rebel Scum use clear Scotch tape to tape off the signature to protect it, and then just very gently put a little bit of that polish and glaze and just basically, you know, take care of it. Now, I've never done it before, and based on the people who have, it's supposed to work amazingly well. And as you can see, I don't have very much to lose. This is just very, very darkly oxidized. I'd love to bring out the silver, you know, shine on it again. I don't know what this is made of. I said in my New Hope Darth Vader review this was silver, and now I think about it, that's ridiculous. It can't be silver, it'd be way more expensive. This is something else. I mean, I don't know whether it's just steel or whether it's aluminum or whatever it is, but for sure it tarnishes very badly. It oxidizes very quickly. And again, Master Replicas switched over and stopped using it very quickly when the problem became widespread. I did a little bit more research, and quite a few of the early plaques actually had this problem. So for sure, we have the Vader dual signature version, both plaques affected. We have the Empire Strikes Back, which I have in my hand. In addition, the Count Dooku signature was also on a plaque like this, as was the Luke, you know, I believe it was the Luke Episode 4 signature, as well as the Darth Maul signature. So these were the first batches of lightsabers that Master Replicas made. And all of those lightsabers, the Dooku, the Maul, the Luke, and the two Vaders from Episode 4 and 5 had these plaques. Now, some of the plaques tarnished faster and much worse than others. For sure, the Empire Strikes Back is notorious, as was the Darth Maul version. My New Hope one wasn't quite as bad. I don't know whether that's something inherent to the plaque or whether it's just because it was just handled much nicer. My suspicion that is it was just handled better, or maybe the environment was better, because the Vader dual signature New Hope version was one of the first lightsabers made. So these plaques would be first generation. You would expect it to tarnish. So Maul, Empire Strikes Back, New Hope Vader, those were all known to be bad. I haven't heard too many bad stories about Dooku or Luke, and so it could be that they maybe, you know, made those a little bit better. So in any case, I am planning to take care of this. I'm going to maybe put up a separate little video just to show, you know, the before and after and see how it works. The major question is, when you're doing the polish and glaze, will it get rid of all the oxidation but leave sort of the black print alone? You can see that Star Wars and Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, Vader, Lightsaber, all of these, including his name, James Earl Jones, all of this, you know, is black, and we don't want all of that to come off. We want it to be polished, we want the metal to be polished, but we don't want the actual print to be also, you know, taken off as well. I mean, it's engraved, right? And so that's something that I'm gonna have to see, but from what other people have done, it doesn't look like that's a problem, but I'd rather even have the black fade a bit and have it look nice and shiny and silver than to have this, which is just, you know, not very attractive at all. So that's the signature plaque. Another pretty, like, in retrospect, hilarious story is, obviously now you know that it's supposed to rest like this, right? All the way here, you're supposed to, you know, have it like this. But at the time, again, because this was my first signature saber, I had no idea. And I thought that it was supposed to rest like this. You see that? So that in a way, like, you know, this would be the way it was displayed. So I actually put the plaque initially completely wrong. I put this thing, you know, facing up like this way, and I also didn't put it all the way down, so it was like jutting up at a very odd angle, and it was just a disaster. So actually, before my review, for the first time in 8 years, I did try to, you know, force this plaque off of the adhesive. And I gotta tell you, even after nearly a decade, I thought it was gonna be impossible to do. I thought I was gonna have to go in with an X-Acto knife or something and try to, you know, cut this off. It was just really crazy. But somehow I got the purchase off of one end, and I just exerted strength, and little by little, I actually was able to peel this, you know, this I'm going to just say aluminum or steel plaque off of the adhesive with some difficulty, and I did replace it in a way. And so this is still actually, pretty tight. It's not easy to come off, and so I'm just gonna leave it here for now. It doesn't need any super glue. But yeah, when I first did it, I actually had it displayed literally like this, and the thing was, going up that way, and I had to actually correct it. So for those of you who are lucky enough to get one of these signature edition lightsabers in the future, just understand that this is the way you are supposed to attach the signature plaque to the acrylic leg. And to not lose hope, if you do it wrong, it's not the end of the world. It'll take you some time, but just be patient and you will be able to lift off the metal off of the adhesive again, even though it's very, very strong. So much for the plaque. We're gonna put that aside, and now we're going to take the lightsaber off. You can actually feel the rubber kind of give. And I'm gonna move this back over here so we can have some room to take a look at it. So you can see that this is actually very similar to the New Hope lightsaber. And since I already talked in such loving detail about that lightsaber, I like to add a few more things. So again, all of the Vader lightsabers are modifications of the flash guns used in the MPP cameras. That's sourced in Great Britain. All of these, of course, are artifacts now. They don't exist anymore, and so getting original MPPs are basically considered antique. You can see that I was so anal that I actually even kept the Made in China sticker on this lightsaber. And so I think better of it now. We're just going to remove that. I don't really care about such things. So 8 years later, guys, I'm taking off the Made in China sticker so we can appreciate it in all its glory. I didn't polish it like I polished the other ones. So you may see a few little fingerprints and smears. But so all of these again are made from the flash handle or flash gun of these old school cameras. So there are people out there who like to make these lightsabers from scratch using the original antique parts, just like the prop department did all those decades ago. And it's really, really difficult to get the proper antique parts from these cameras and flash guns. So that's the basis of these lightsabers. And then this part right here is called the shroud. There's different parts, or there's different types of shrouds. So this is what we call a one-step shroud, because there's a step, and there's only one step from this area to the tip. And you can see that this is the step. And there are other MPP shrouds that are two steps, where there's actually one and then a second step. The finish, or the finish is way rougher, and it's more wrinkly. And this is actually considerably more wrinkly than even the New Hope one is more wrinkly than even this one. So getting at it from here, you can see the end of the flash gun tube, which in this case is the end of the emitter, and the shroud is then placed onto the end. Just as before, you can see here the D-ring that can move. You can see the thumb screw on the side, and then you can see the two screws on either end. This is essentially identical to the Star Wars Episode 4 New Hope Vader lightsaber. This here is the bulb release. You can actually press the button. I believe in the lore, this is what you press to ignite the saber, okay? Here you have the various ports. You have the S port in red, as well as the B port. One of the differences is that this is a large B port. Apparently these ports that come with these flash guns have different sized ports, and the large B port is now considerably more sought after and more rare than the smaller B ports. So you can see here, there's the B. There was an E on the New Hope, but we don't have that here. You can see that the rivets, the nail positions are also in good position. Here's the S port right here. And then in contrast to the New Hope version, these have multicolored wires through them. So you can see one here and two here, and then another two over here as well, okay? So those are kind of some differences, obvious differences from the New Hope and the Empire Strikes Back version. Over here again, you see the clasp, and you can still see the bubble strip, which is taken from a Texas Instruments Exactro scientific calculator. Instead of the sidebar being silver, this is a solid black sidebar. And instead of being straight, you can see that there's a mild trapezoidal shape to it. And then you can see the clamp screw here with the washer used to hold the strip in place, which is again a very significant difference between this and the bent nail from the New Hope. Another difference is that when we get to the handle right over here, and you can see the T-tracks, there's no gap between the handle of the T-tracks and the actual clasp, whereas in the New Hope saber, there is quite a bit more separation. And then finally, when we look at the very edge of the hilt, I'm going to turn it around slowly. You can again see Master Replicas 2003, so it's made a year later. You can see Lucasfilm Ltd, and at the very bottom, you can appreciate again the signature edition. So this is the Empire Strikes Back Darth Vader lightsaber. You can see the reflection here even of the washer and the screw and the shiny clasp. And so hopefully with this description, you have a much clearer idea of the different parts that make up the Vader lightsaber and some of the minute differences between this version for Empire Strikes Back and the one from the original Star Wars: A New Hope. I'm going to turn things around so you can actually see it from the other side. You can see the other side of the sidebar here. You can see the bubble strip. The different rubber T-tracks, which is actually honestly in pretty darn good condition. All of these things can be taken off, by the way. There's little holes where they are placed, they're glued in place. Again, over time, the glue gets a little bit rough. I think one of these I can actually just manually remove, but it stays there pretty reasonably well. And then again, the D-ring and the thumb screws, the bulb release buttons, the wires, all of this. So kind of neat that we're able to see sort of the similarity and the difference between these lightsabers. Most of it having to do with the wiring and then the position of the clasp and the absence of the bent nail. So there you have it. And now you're going to see me gently place it back. So there's a very specific area where you can see that if you don't place it perfectly correctly, it won't really be level. So you can't put it here because you're going to hit the wire. You can't put it here because you're going to hit this screw. So there's only really one place to put it, right over here, for it to rest on this side. And that's kind of determines where that has to be. The James Earl Jones signature plaque could either be placed technically in this area, or you can put it in the center. Now that I actually have the plaque properly placed, I think it can actually go over here. And that could be why they actually offset the saber off a little bit so that you can actually see the plaque in this area. So I don't know. I mean, either way, you can display however you want. If you display it with the D-ring facing up, you of course will not be able to show the bubble strip. But you can see actually that if I try to turn it around, it doesn't quite work, because again, the acrylic legs are now spread far apart. And because if you remember in the Star Wars Vader New Hope version, there's an actual space here between the T-track grips and the clasp. And because the acrylic legs are much closer, you can actually spin the lightsaber. For here, you can't spin it. You can spin it here, but over here, there is asymmetry, and it would actually move the lightsaber off from perfect horizontal. So for instance, if we were to try to do it like this, you know, it wouldn't quite work because, again, you're now placing other things on this thing, and it's not symmetrical. So you're really meant to display it like that, which means that you're going to see essentially the screw and the washer here, and you don't get to see the bubble strip unless you take it off. And then I really do believe that this is the space where they're placed in, just perfectly placed, where you have your signature plaque right over here, so you can get to see the whole thing. And if everything works out like it's supposed to, you can then take this acrylic case and you put it in here, and you can see that that's how it's supposed to look in all its glory. So there you have it. This is the Star Wars Episode 5 Empire Strikes Back Darth Vader 1-to-1 Signature Edition Master Replicas lightsaber. A beautiful, beautiful lightsaber. They made 500 of this. I think they made 2,500 of the limited edition, so to speak. So definitely a lot less of this version than the Star Wars one. I bought it for $1,000, and if you can find one of these for less than, I think, $4,000, it would be considered a pretty solid deal. Its number is 117S. 117 is the Empire Strikes Back Vader lightsaber, and the S is the signature edition. So haven't really even seen this for sale all that often, but it's definitely an heirloom, and I feel, you know, very privileged to own this and to finally put up a YouTube video review of this. There's only two actually on YouTube that I know of. One is by a very, very extensive Master Replicas collector. I think his name is Chris, but he usually uses that channel to showcase his collectibles to potential buyers, and he uses to document the packaging of those collectibles. So they're pretty small, and there's no real commentary. And then there's another guy, I think his name is Boba Fett or something like that. He's a very passionate collector, and he was able to get a signature edition Empire Strikes Back as well. Ironically, when he bought it, the person he bought it from had also put the signature plaque on in exactly the same wrong way that I had. In case Boba Fett is watching this video in the future, I just want to let you know that you can correct that without damaging it. Just just use strong, even force, and it will peel right off, and you can reaffix it the proper way. Okay. I have actually all the paperwork, including the certificate, but unfortunately, that's put away in another place right now that I can't easily get to, and so I'm not going to showcase that. But I do have all of the paperwork as well as the packaging. So there you have it. I hope you enjoy this review. This is obviously a lot shorter than the Star Wars A New Hope dual signature Vader lightsaber, and rightly so. There's a bit less history to it, but I used the extra time to sort of go over again the situation with the oxidation of the plaque and sort of also correct some of the errors I made in the original review, and also deliver a little bit more information knowing the different parts of the MPP that they used for the lightsaber, including the shroud, the D-ring, the thumb screws, the wires, the ports, the clasp, the sidebars, the T-tracks. There's just a lot to that. So I found that kind of interesting as I was doing some research about all those different components. So next up will be the return of the Jedi Signature Edition Darth Vader lightsaber. And then I'll have the one with all 4 of them to compare. And I am going to do another little video. Keep your fingers crossed for me as I try to polish this embarrassing oxidized signature plaque and hopefully bring it to new life so that we have a very clear before and after shot. So once that polish comes in, I'm gonna hopefully be able to be successful in doing that. So until then, I hope you enjoyed this review, and until I see you next time, do take care. Well, I'm going to add this little tiny postscript to my Empire Strikes Back Signature Edition Darth Vader lightsaber review, because I dug around. I did actually find the paperwork for this lightsaber right here. So I got all the original paperwork. You can see here, this is an actual registration form to Master Replicas. And here we have the same postcard that they gave for the Star Wars A New Hope dual signature version. This is to register for their Collector Society, a special invitation to the Master Replica Collector Society, and you can see the benefits. This is the same as for that one. Over here, they actually have a limited warranty that tells you how to take advantage of their repair policies, replacement of product or parts, refund or exchanges. So that's pretty neat. Again, this was all a year later. And then one of the more interesting ones is this is actually an official Prop Replicas catalog, the product catalog. And if you open it up, it actually shows you, what had been released before. So it's pretty fascinating because I think 2002 is when they did their, their initial wave. And as you saw from my review, this was done in 2003. So look, it shows you the limited edition replicas, limited to 7,500, recreated from original Lucasfilm archival materials. This replica is a faithful reproduction of Darth Vader's lightsaber seen in Star Wars: A New Hope. Constructed from durable machine and die-cast metal components, it is hand-finished to meet exacting standards and may be purchased alone or with a museum-quality hardwood and acrylic display case. So this is actually quite interesting because I was wondering what the difference was. So take a look. It's basically $50. And so if you spend an extra $50, it will come with a display case. Now, based on rebelscum.com and some of the questions we asked, apparently the limited edition A New Hope lightsaber, as well as the signature edition over here, supposedly were the only ones that came with an option. And there was also, I believe, a blaster. I don't know whether it was Han Solo or Boba Fett, but the blaster also you could opt to choose whether you wanted to save a little bit of money and not have the display case. But the vast majority of future Master Replicas pieces, you didn't really have an option moving forward. They just included the display case. So take a look, very interesting. You have the Count Dooku lightsaber, also released in 2002. And they also gave you an option between buying it with or without the display case. But check this out. So here, under the limited edition, this is the non-signature, you have the option, and it's always a $50 difference. And you can see that the Dooku costs the same as the Vader lightsaber. But here, when we get to the signature edition, number one, it was already sold out, but it comes with a display case, authenticity documents, etc., which means that the $600, it does actually come with a museum quality display case. So there was an open question whether you could also buy the signature editions with or without that display case, like the limited edition. But if you believe the brochure, and if Master Replicas didn't change things, now we know that this is indeed not the case. When you buy a signature edition version, it comes with the acrylic case and mirror base. And if you think about it, that would make sense. I mean, you're paying a premium, you're paying almost double. Why wouldn't they give you a $50 base and case, which would make this a pretty good value? And similarly, if you were to go to the other side, you have the Count Dooku Signature Edition lightsaber. Quite a bit more signatures. There's 1,000 of them. So obviously, the early releases, they had a lot more of everything. You know, the signatures as well, because later on, those would shrink to 500 and 750. So both the Count Dooku and the Vader lightsabers had higher, higher numbers. And you can see as well that this comes with a signed and numbered plaque, as well as a custom display case authenticity. And this was sold for $500, so $100 cheaper, no doubt because there was one less person to sign. And you can see that it does come with a museum quality display case. So as far as that goes, now we know for a fact that these signature editions for both Vader and Dooku came with those acrylic display cases and mirrored bases. And then they also had some of the Force Effects collectibles that actually came with their electroluminescent blades as well. There's one for Anakin and Darth Vader, but interestingly, there's no price. The one for Anakin was available now, but the one for Vader was not going to be available until 2003. So I think that this is actually a fascinating brochure, and does answer quite a bit of questions for us about what the original price tag was for some of these. So finally, we have the Master Replicas Certificate of Authenticity. So a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And then of course you can see the great James Earl Jones. So you can see him signing this. And you can see, actually, look at this. This is what that plaque is supposed to look like right here. And then this is what it looks like now. So hopefully I can polish that to eventually make it look like this. And it's gonna be a little bit tricky because I only have one hand, since the other hand is actually holding the camera. I'm going to try to open up this case, and then this is sort of the same paper that's there to protect the same paper that's supposed to protect the certificate. So I'm opening it right now so you can actually see it. So here goes. I'm going to slowly move down so you can pause the video and read about this. It seems very, very similar. It even seems like the picture is very similar, but it is different. They even tell you that it's only 500 versus 1,000. And then on this side, it gives you the information for the signature edition Empire Strikes Back lightsaber. I'm going to move slowly down so you can pause and read it if that is what you should wish. So yeah, this is the certificate. I question what this paper was for, but from another YouTube video, I guess this is just there to protect, I guess, the inside of the certificate of authenticity for whatever reason. So that's it. That's all of the paperwork for the Star Wars Episode 5 Empire Strikes Back signature edition Darth Vader lightsaber. I'm pretty happy I was able to find this from my, collection. I have this drawer where all of these, have this drawer where all of the paperwork is. I did manage to find it, so I'm pretty happy that I was able to do that. And I'm going to add this to my original review, which is going to make it even longer, of course, but I don't think you'll mind to be able to take a look at this amazing history, and to have answered the original MSRP for some of these pieces. All right, very good. So until next time, I hope you enjoyed, and do take care.